anybody's missing? Okay, we'll get started. The introduction and purpose of the Hall of Fame. It's in memory of Andy Morse and Mel Walter Morse. The 2012 inaugural Broadway High School Hall of Fame was established. Andy, a son of Melvin and Letitia Morse, was a member of the class of 1998. He was a three-sport athlete for each year in high school, competing in golf, basketball, and baseball. Mel was an HPE teacher and department chair and coached girls basketball, boys basketball, and baseball, serving Broadway for 16 years before becoming athletic director at Waynesboro High School. The Broadway High School Hall of Fame recognizes outstanding contributions by athletes, coaches, and community supporters. Inducted members are invited to an annual banquet and memorialized with a Hall of Fame display located in the school's athletic hall, which most of you walk by coming in here. Our guest speaker tonight was supposed to be Coach Tom Alabal. Those of you who know Coach Tom Alabal can imagine what all he's been saying tonight. But he was really looking forward to it. And the committee, when we found out that he was interested in being a speaker, we all went for that, said, okay, that's great. Well, last Monday, I had a message on my phone at home from Tom wanting to know exactly when the day was. He couldn't remember if it was the 15th, 16th, or 14th, or whatever. So naturally, I didn't get the message until the next day. I checked the phone. And I called him back, and he sounded terrible. And he always called me Dubby. I said, Dubby, I can't do it. He said, I had a heart attack. Between the time he called the day before and the time I called back. So that put us in somewhat of a bind for a speaker. So when we get in the bind, we found out we can rely on our athletic director to say a few things to come up with some stuff. We thought about Joe May, but we wasn't sure if he was going to be able to be here. He did show up, thank goodness. We're thankful for that, but maybe another time we can get Joe to be a speaker for us. Okay. We'll go ahead and get the inductees. Our first inductee is Jess Falk. I remember Jess, I was just a little guy, but going over there on Saturday afternoons and watching him play, and he's quite a track man and a good basketball player. He was a 61 graduate of Broadway High School. During his time at Broadway, he lettered in basketball, football, and track. On the track, he set his school record for scoring 112 3/4 points individually, competing in the shot put, discus, 880 relay team, the high hurdles, and broad jump. He was also a member of the 1961 District Championship basketball team, which a lot of us remember that team. So our first inductee is Jess Falk. Jess could not be with us tonight. Is there anyone here and his family to accept this award? Okay, so Jess will be in the Hall of Fame. Okay, giving out the plaques tonight will be Matt Morse, Mel, Letitia's son. Our next inductee is Heather Cantrell. Heather's a 2013 Broadway graduate where she excelled in volleyball, basketball, and the softball field. She's a 4-time first-team All-District softball player, 2-time first-team All-Region softball player, named first-team All-State as a junior, and second-team All-State as a senior on the softball field. In total, she played 106 softball games, hit .435, with 23 triples, 93 RBIs, and held a field average of .992. She currently holds the school record with 345 at-bats. My Atlanta Braves could have used her last week. Heather was also impressive on the basketball court. She is 3-time first-team All-District honor, 2-time first-team All-Region player, and scored 1,130 career points with 604 rebounds. In addition to her softball record, she left Broadway with 5 more school records on the basketball and volleyball courts. In basketball, she holds the school record for career field goal percentage at 48.9%, career free throws made with 402, and season free throws made with 152. In volleyball, she's school records 53 spikes in a match, 583 spikes in the season. At this time, she's going to be introduced by her assistant coach, John Jekyll.
Talk too much about volleyball, and I can't talk too much about basketball. I'll probably talk a little bit more about basketball than I can volleyball, but I'm a softball guy, and it's been my pleasure to coach Heather. I coached her for 4 years, all the way through. She was took us to the state championship a couple times, and I got 2 things that I really remember about Heather. One of them was when she hit the walk-off home run against TA to put us into the regions. We went to state championship that year. And the way that she can run from first to third, you know it was either track or basketball, because that's one thing. Getting to first is one thing, but those other, when you're going, I mean, I think one time she took 9 steps for 60 feet. But it's been my pleasure to coach her these years, and she was also JV coach for us the year after she graduated. So it's been my pleasure and honor to coach her, and I'm happy she's inducted in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, okay. Hi, I didn't come prepared. I told my husband on the way over here, I think I was supposed to prepare a speech. I didn't prepare a speech. I graduated in 2013. I ain't talked to people since then publicly, so I'm very, I'm very grateful for the honor. I love Broadway, and I wouldn't have went anywhere else. John, you're the best, and thank you so much for talking about me tonight. There was a miscommunication. He was told I was going to call him. I was told he already knew he was doing it, so I get here and John's like, what do we do? We don't know, so thank you guys, I appreciate it.
Our next inductee is Chris Knight. Chris is a 2011 graduate of Broadway High School. He excelled on the basketball court, where he was a 3-time first-team All-District guard while earning District Player of the Year honors as a senior. He was a 2-time All-Region player and was named second-team All-State as a junior and senior. In his career, he scored 1,258 career points, good for second all-time at Broadway. Made a school record 144 career three-pointers, including 7 in a game, which is now good for second all-time. Chris also holds school records with 64 three-pointers made in the season, 101 steals in the season, and career steals with 211. He shared the basketball and ranks 10th all-time with 90 assists in a single season. This time he'll be introduced by one of his coaches, Terry Jameson.
had the privilege of wearing a Broadway uniform for 4 years. I've had even greater privilege for the last 22 years to be able to coach here. The last 18 with my really good friend and high school teammate, Dwight Walton. It's nice tonight when I see my former coach, Coach Leake here, who instilled a lot of the things that we try to instill in our players that all came from Coach Leake. So during this 18 years, Dwight has built a tremendous program here, one of the most successful programs here at Broadway on a consistent basis. And last year we were able to celebrate his 200th victory here, which is a major accomplishment here at the school. So when Chris asked me to do this, I started thinking, what are a couple of things I could say about Chris, characteristics that, words that come to mind with Chris. The first thing that comes to mind is the word relentless. Chris was the Energizer Bunny. If anybody got a chance to see him play, he was constant movement all across the floor. And that was whether we were doing an open gym in the wintertime or in the off-season, or whether it was an off-season workout, whether it was practice or whether it was a game. He had one speed, it was wide open, full gear. I mean, there was no slowing down. Tremendous player from that aspect, brought energy to the floor every time he stepped on the floor. Of course, this abundance of energy created some problems for us as coaches at times. We soon learned when we brought Chris up as a sophomore in varsity that when we, coach, would huddle everybody up to talk to him in a huddle, and during practice, that Chris can be a little bit distracting at times. He didn't have the ability to kind of keep quiet or to stand still. So we finally figured out the best way to manage Chris in a huddle was that my job as this coach became just to kind of put my arm around him, and we would walk around the circle to keep him quiet and to keep him focused on what coach was saying, because if he stood still, it was going to be a problem. The other thing we figured out with him is, thank God he was such a great player that we never had to have him sit on the bench too long. If we had to pull him off the floor and put him on the bench, all of us coaches were ready to kill him because we wanted to put him back on the floor because he would drive us absolutely crazy there. So thankfully, you were such a good player, we didn't want you on the bench too long. So the second word that came to mind about Chris was determined. Probably of all the players I've ever coached, this kid never accepted failure. He worked on his game constantly in the off season, all year round. This kid was determined to be great, and that's what made him such a great player. If he had a bad night shooting, which wasn't too often, he would be in the gym getting extra shots out. Always typically the last kid to ever leave the gym. You had to drag him out of the gym. He was either working on his shot, working on free throws, or trying to drag me over and play one-on-one after the end of practice. So I soon learned that I had to finally just let him win because we couldn't go home until he won. So I just finally let him win some games. So. And the last word that comes to mind about Chris, and I think probably the most accurate, is the word fearless. Obviously, you see him, he's not taller than me, maybe 5'9", 5'10" on a good day. Pound for pound, maybe the best player to ever come through here. Obviously not the biggest, but man, he got the biggest heart. Played at an unbelievable level. Great players want the ball in their hands at the end of a game when it matters, clutch time. I don't remember this kid ever missing any shots that mattered. I don't ever remember him missing a free throw that mattered. He was just one of those guys when a game was on the line, that's who you wanted to have the ball in his hands because he was going to come through and make those plays for you. So the only other thing I want to say about Chris is when he was coming through in our state run, where we had 3 district titles back-to-back, a region championship, and a state runner-up game that we lost in double overtime. And during that time, we had a little 8-year-old ball boy. And this little ball boy got to be in our practices and in our games and in the locker room with us and on the bench with us during all this time. And his hero was Chris Knight. He was 8 years old and he looked up to Chris. And the great thing was, at the end of practice, Chris would spend time shooting baskets with him, shooting threes, talking to him about different things, working on some of his moves, and just basically hanging out with him. Now, as an 8-year-old, when your hero acknowledges you, that's a pretty cool thing to have happen. And so, Chris, I don't know if you had any idea of what kind of influence you had on that kid, but you inspired him to want to love the game like you did. So, it was pretty cool that 10 years later, when this kid was a senior in high school, I got to watch him grow up and play, and we were still coaching, and I got to watch him break some of his heroes' records. So that was a pretty cool thing. So, but regardless of how many records your name is still beside, your impact on Broadway basketball will last a lifetime, son. My honor to introduce to you Hall of Fame inductee, Chris Knight.
First off, I want to thank this guy for saying I shared the ball. I never heard that. I'd like to thank all the coaches, the time they put in. Thanks for the committee for making this possible. My teammates, man, I play with an awesome group of people, man. It's everybody with brotherhood, you know, the state run. It's like family. But yeah, it's an honor. I'm excited for my kids to come through Broadway and play for, you know, the sports here. And yeah, I'm grateful. So, thank you.
This time I'm going to change things a little bit. Ryan, do you feel okay to do it? Okay. Ryan was going to fill in for our guest speakers. He's got in the throat or voice or something a little bit, so I'll give him time to see if he can do it. And if he quits on us, that's okay too. We're not going to punish him.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I too am sorry that Coach Allball could not be here. He's a great speaker with wonderful stories, and that's the highlight of this event. I can't believe we've been doing it for 11 years. Time surely does fly. But I was thinking the other day, preparing for this, that over the course of a school year, we host about 150 different events. JV, varsity, boys and girls, 18 different varsity sports. It's a lot. This event is my favorite. It's nights like this that really make this job fun. And it's because of the stories being told. And tonight to see Heather come through and Chris, who I coached JV, it adds another layer to it, right? Because now I know people instead of just hearing stories. So congratulations to all the inductees. It's a great pleasure. And I was asked to talk about what are some things you have seen the past 12 years since you've been in this role as athletic director that has changed. And maybe for Chris and for Heather, who graduated only 10 or 12 years ago, there's not much change. But I'm guessing if you graduated in the 90s, in the 70s, maybe even some in the 60s, things have certainly changed, and a lot in the past 12 years. So I have 3 or 4 very quick things that have changed. Some of this is to maybe educate those who are here, but just to show how time flies and so do times and changes happen. The first one is probably 10 or 12 years ago, the Virginia High School League, which governs all high school sports in Virginia, changed the rule that now teams can practice year-round. And so technically, you know, a coach could hold practice 6 days a week, pretty much 11 months out of the year. Now, in Rockingham County, we realize that is not good for anyone, and so we do restrict that. But there are schools around this state who practice 6 days a week. And so while there is some benefit to year-round practice, right, our wonderful coaches get to interact with kids on a more regular basis. They don't have to travel with AAU programs per se just to get around the rules. They can hold practice here in our gyms and on our fields. They get to know our players better. There's been a lot of burnout, right? And so when I think about Joe Jones, who's going into our Hall of Fame tonight, he coached 3 or 4 or 5 different sports. Coaches now really can't do that because there's so much pressure on them to focus on one sport because that's what everyone's doing across the state. I would love to have Coach Walton, Coach Pobold again, but he's too busy, and I know that. And so there's pros and cons to each of these that happen very quickly over the last 10 or 12 years. A second thing that has changed in the last 10 years is that the Virginia High School League was sued and lost. And the lawsuit was to allow private schools to enter into the Virginia High School League. We're being live streamed, so I'll keep my personal opinion to myself. But we were thinking, okay, what does this mean for Broadway? What does this mean for Virginia high schools? So far, only one school has joined us. And it has made a big impact on how we have to advance in the postseason. So at first, when this first happened, I thought, okay, would EMHS join us, Blue Ridge Christian, Grace Christian down the street? But that has not happened. So really, unfortunately, we've had one school kind of disrupt how we do our postseason play. But like I said, my opinion's not really, doesn't matter anyways, right? The third thing that has changed is that we have went from 3 classifications to 6 classifications. So what does that mean? That means we now have 6 state champions. So back when Chris and I was going through, and Heather, when you guys made your softball run, you guys were 1 or 2 schools out of 100 to be in the state championship game. And now that's been reduced down to 60 schools. So there's 60 schools in each classification instead of 100 schools. So there's pros and cons to that, right? Maybe a con is that the competition is watered down a little bit. A pro is that we are given more chances for our students to advance in the postseason, to be recognized, to receive postseason honors. Like I tell our coaches all the time and our student athletes, don't worry about all the different regulations. Whoever you have to play against, do your very best and let's win whoever's in front of you. And that's the theory we've done over the past 12 years, and we've been very successful. And so we are a 3A school, which means we have between 800 and 1,200 students. And we have about 1,000 students. So we're right in the middle, and we're very competitive. We have teams advance to states every year. In the past 7 or 8 years, we've had a state championship girls basketball team, a state championship indoor track team. We've won many individual state championships. And so it's been a lot of fun to see those successes. And the last way that sports have changed recently is just the use of technology. Just like I said, we're live streaming this tonight. It's going to be on YouTube here in a few minutes. All of our games, most of our games are live streamed, I should say. It's automatic. We don't have students filming the game, but there's cameras. They follow the ball, they live stream it, and you can pay $12 a month and you can watch all of our sporting events. So we literally have fans, grandparents, uncles and aunts from around the world watching our games, which is pretty neat. And we can see those stats. So it's pretty neat to see someone in Europe watching our games. Little Broadway over in Europe, it's pretty cool. The technology is also there for our coaches. So for several sports, the game film is uploaded to a computer. It is statted, and the coaches can receive an email in less than 24 hours with all the game stats. And there is so much information, there's not enough time in the day to decipher what it all means. But it's super handy for our coaches. We're not taking video cameras anymore with student managers filming every away game. It's done automatically for us. We have online ticketing. So pretty much if you see it at the Division I level for athletics, it eventually trickles down to the high school, and that's where we're at now, where people are now showing us their phone, we click on their ticket, and they go into the game. So that's a little bit, when I just think about it just briefly, how things have changed in the past 10 or 12 years. Those are the 4 really highlights that came to my mind. I just want to reiterate, it's truly a blessing to be at Broadway High School. I've been here, this is my 21st year. It's really hard to believe, but there's no other place I'd rather be than Broadway. I love watching our student athletes compete. Our coaches are awesome. We want to win every single game, but we teach more than just sports. We teach about life, and hopefully we're making lifelong impacts on young men and women. And of course, what drew me here to begin with was the community support, right? I've heard about how awesome Broadway was from the 50s, 60s, and nothing changes. In some ways, it is very easy for me to schedule games because everyone wants to play Broadway because they know we're gonna bring a crowd. And as an AD, when the other team can bring a crowd, that means you make more money. And we gotta pay the bills. So it's a great place. I love Broadway community, and I'm just privileged to be here as your athletic director.
Before I forget it, and Ryan can get a seat quick, he needs a big round of applause. Ryan keeps this whole thing together. He schedules it every year. He gets it all together. Puts all those papers on that, gets everything ready. He's done a great job. Are there any coaches here tonight besides Dwight, Bob and Dwight? Okay. I've always been one to say that the coaches need to get to this thing, because you can learn about what Broadway High School sports was about, and athletics, and the athletes and coaches that came through here. If they've missed the last 11 meetings, they've missed some fantastic stories and things that give you goosebumps with some of the things that's happened here in athletes and with ball games and stuff here at Broadway High School. So we're really fortunate to have had the teams and the coaches and athletes that we've had come through here so far. And we even got a lot more to get. Okay, just thought I'd mention that. So if you see a coach, tell them they missed something again. Okay, our next inductee. I had him 12 different seasons. I didn't because I failed. I had him for 12 different seasons the time I was in Broadway High School, and I think that's a record. Hunter and I were talking about that. I don't know of anybody that had this next inductee for a coach more than I did. Had him in JV football, JV basketball, varsity football, varsity basketball, varsity baseball. And he probably got tired of me. I didn't get tired of him because he's a great coach. The other thing, I just want to say a few things before Hunter gets up here. He's the only coach probably that's come through Broadway High School, maybe not, maybe Scotty Hamilton, some of those guys that at a halftime at one ball game, we were getting beat pretty good by Luray, which was a strong basketball team when I played. I was a senior. We went in the locker room, sat down on the bench. Coach Jones was around the corner where the urinals and stuff are. And we saw smoke coming up out. He's the only coach I knew of that would light up a cigar in a locker room. Can you imagine doing that today? You can't even get on school property and light anything up. And man, when he was mad, when he lit that thing up and he bit the end of that Tipperella, you knew that you were about to get chewed out. The only other thing I wanted to mention about him, we were in a baseball game. We were playing TA. It was always a big game. We played TA baseball like everything else. We were playing them up there, took the bus up, took our batting practice, and the coaches always meet at home plate with the umpire before the game, to go over the local rules or whatever. So Coach Jones and TA's coach were there, and the umpire was Pidge Rose. I think that's his name, Hunter, right? He also umpired in the Valley League, which Coach Jones had played in also. And you could tell for years he umpired a lot of our ball games that they just didn't like each other for some reason. Maybe off the field fine, but on the field, they did not get along. So they're up there going over the local rules before the game. Pidge Long's the umpire, and I see Coach Jones, he's scraping his cleats, he starts pointing at him, and the umpire says, "You're out of here." So he goes and sits on the bus while we play the baseball game. Gets kicked clear out of the ballpark. But that's the kind of guy he was. He patted you on the back and did well, and he kicked your butt if he didn't. He's being inducted as a coach and contributing to the Hall of Fame. Well, Broadway served as athletic director from 1970 to 78. In 75, he was named the first full-time athletic director in school history. He was also the varsity head coach for the boys and girls teams, as well as the golf and baseball coach. During his tenure, he also assisted the baseball and football teams. He accumulated over 150 wins as a basketball coach. I don't know why we couldn't figure out the wins he had in baseball. And there was a few, had to be quite a few. At this time, I'll have Hunter Holler come forward to introduce the daughter of the inductee.
Thank you, C.W. This is a real honor for me to be able to introduce our next honoree, Joseph T. Joe Jones. In honoring Joe tonight, as C.W. has already alluded to, we're recognizing the tremendous number of years and teams and people that he impacted over those months and years that he gave to baseball coaching, football coaching, basketball coaching, golf coaching, as CW's already said. In addition to being the athletic director, first full-time athletic director in those days. So I guess I'm kind of here simply as one example of the players that he touched over that period of time. As you've already learned, CW was one of those. There are some others here tonight who were also touched, but I am certainly one of those. And I was able to tell Joe in the last couple of years of his life, he was almost like a second father to me. There were many years I spent more time with him than I did my own family. So he was very, very special to me. So in the course of my comments here, which I promise not to go on too long, but I'm going to tell a couple stories that Joe's family members who are here have probably heard some of them. But my first introduction to Joe Jones was my father taking me to a baseball game when I was about 11 years old, and he took me to a game at Newmarket. This goes back so far that Newmarket had wooden stands back then, so there may be some people who remember that. But the Rebels were playing the Harrisonburg Turks that night. And as an 11-year-old, I remember this intense competitive pitcher who was on the mound for the Harrisonburg Turks, and that was Joe Jones. Little did I know at that point what an impact he would have on me, but I quickly figured out what a fierce competitor he was. So jump forward to 8th grade. I guess I showed up here in something like 1962. JV football. I never played football. Joe was an assistant on the JV football team, I think, under head coach at that time, Tom Alabal. And I quickly learned, again, fierce competitor. He wanted things done right. Jump up to 9th grade, JV football again, JV basketball, and now add to that, I'm playing varsity baseball as a 9th grader. I was with Joe a lot. He was tough but fair. That 9th grade year, in case you were tempted to get impressed that I was playing varsity as 9th grade, we played 9 games and we lost all of them. And so I learned how unhappy losses made Joe. So fast forward then to 10th grade. So I'm with Joe some more. Now I'm adding academic subjects like geometry, where I earned my first D. Not A, not B, not C, D. So here I had spent all this time with Joe. You'd think he might give me a break. No, if you knew Joe, he was tough, but he was fair, and I earned a D. And so that's what I got. Later on, or earlier that year, I tried out for varsity basketball. And at that point, Broadway didn't keep many 10th graders on varsity basketball. We had some grade 11th and 12th graders. So the decision was made that I was going to be cut from the varsity team that year. And so I remember coaches posting who made the team on the door. They'd stick it on the door. Well, that's not what happened this time. Joe called me into the teacher's lounge. Those were in the days when the teacher's lounge, the smoke was so thick you could cut it with a knife. But Joe had me in there one-on-one to let me know I'd been cut from the varsity team, but he wanted to make sure that I knew I'd be playing for him on the JV team. And I think that just demonstrated he cared about me as a person. So I went on to play JV basketball, and I had a great year. I loved playing that year. We won a lot of games and had a great time. So it was a blessing in disguise. That same 10th grade year, Joe was managing now the Newmarket Rebels. He's still in the Valley League, and he was short players to start that year. So as a 10th grader, I started for the Newmarket Rebels. I started the opening game that year. And Joe expressed his care for me in a slightly different way that day. He said, "Hunter, these are college players, and I'm not going to let you get beat around out there. I'll come and get you if it gets too bad." Well, I made it through the game. We lost, but it didn't get too bad. But again, Joe demonstrated that he cared about me. So then, fast forward to 12th grade, senior year, my senior year, I'm in physics class. Joe was extremely smart. Sometimes athletes and coaches are passed off as not the smartest knives, not the sharpest knives in the drawer, but I can tell you, Joe was sharp. He was very smart, and physics was about all I could handle. I made it through, but barely. But one of the things I remember about Joe as a teacher, I forget which class it was. I had him for several. I just mentioned two, but he walked into the first day of one of those classes. He looked out over the class and he said, "I don't have behavior problems in my classes." And he didn't. I can assure you. So here's the story that Joe's family has heard from me. So Joe cared about playing baseball the right way, particularly baseball. That was his sport. And he trained us pitchers about how to defend the squeeze play, the suicide squeeze play. So runner on third, less than 2 outs. If the batter squares around the bunt, those of you that played baseball know what you got to do. You got to throw the ball right at the batter because you got to get him out of the way so the catcher can catch the ball and take the runner out coming from third. Well, he had coached us on that. I knew that. Guess what? It happened in my 12th grade year. We were actually playing interstate back then. We were playing Matthias, West Virginia, Matthias High School here. And they were not expected to beat us, but they were in the game. Sure enough, here it comes. Runner on third, less than 2 outs. The batter squares around the bunt. I knew what I was supposed to do. As soon as I saw the runner going, I knew I was supposed to throw at the batter, but my control wasn't very good, and I threw it right down the middle. The batter bunted the ball, and the run scored. Literally, the dust had not settled from the runner sliding into third base until Joe was on the dead run to the mound. And I'll never forget his words. This is an exact quote. "Hunter, I could not wait to get out here and chew your ass out." But again, the moral of that story is I think Joe realized that I might play some baseball beyond high school, and he wanted me to do it right. He wanted me to know how to play. So later, then at the end of that year, I was recruited by the University of Virginia. It was not a long recruitment list. They were the only school that recruited me. So I went over there for a visit. So in today's world, I don't know how those recruiting trips go, but I suspect lots of family goes. Joe's the one that took me on that recruiting trip. So Joe he had a tough exterior. He was tough, he was fair, but he cared a lot. And he cared about people. My brother came along a few years later and had some of the same experiences with Joe. So he was committed, he was tough, he touched hundreds of young men's lives very positively. And for the pure volume of a statistic of lives touched, Joe is a champion at Broadway High School. I love the man, and I'm happy that from now on he will be in the Broadway High School Hall of Fame. And accepting tonight, I'd like to welcome Joe's daughter, Kim Shomo, who will accept this induction on his behalf.
That's great. All right, well, I hate speaking in front of people, but I'm going to do this. My dad would have been very pleased and honored to be an inductee into the Broadway Hall of Fame. He truly cared about his students, players, and always pushed them to be better. This is evident in a comment posted by a former student and player on the memorial guest book after his passing. He kept my interest in math. That's not easy to do. As a basketball player, he gave me advice, pushed me on and off the court, and I will never forget this man and have a great deal of respect and gratitude. I believe that many of his former students and players feel that way. Barry Holler, Hunter's brother, performed my dad's memorial service. Barry is a former student and player for my dad. In his eulogy, Barry stated that I am amazed and honored by the confidence he showed in me. Joe also taught me about fairness. and integrity. He wrote in my senior annual that he would always be proud to say that he taught me and coached me. Coach Jones, I am proud and grateful and honored that you were my coach. I know that I am proud, grateful, and honored that he was my dad. On a more personal level, I'm not sure that many of his former students and players knew of his humble beginnings. Joe's early life was a tough one. I don't think that part of his life was something he shared with many people. He got very poor in eastern North Carolina. His family were sharecroppers on a tobacco farm. He never knew his dad, and his mom died when he was 12. Soon after, he ran away from home on his bicycle. He spent his high school years living on his aunt's back porch. You could say he was dealt a pretty tough hand in life. Despite all that, my dad earned a full baseball scholarship and pitched for NC State. He earned a college degree and later a master's degree from UVA. Somewhere between that bike ride when he ran away from home and the life he enjoyed later, my dad learned a lot about rising above his circumstances and making something better of yourself. I think his students and players could feel that from him. My dad treated me and his grandsons much like he treated his students and players. He was strict, expected you to do the right thing, pushed you to do your best, but all the while he let you know that he loved and cared about you. He always emphasized honesty and treating others as you would want them to treat you. Thank you for inducting a great dad, grandfather, teacher, and coach into the Broadway High School Hall of Fame.
Okay, our next inductee is Mr. Steve May. When I was a kid, I think we called him the Hammer. I'm not sure. And we would all gather there at the funeral home of all places. That just seemed to be the gathering place on Broadway for all the kids before the Saturday afternoon football game, and we would play a little bit down there in the field. And Coach Carol Reed lived across the street. And he often told my dad, right down there is going to be the next future football players at Broadway High School. And I'll be darned if he wasn't right with a lot of them. But anyway, we would gather and get ready to go over, and somebody would say, going over to see the Hammer today. He could really run a football. We really enjoyed watching him. He's a 62 graduate of Broadway High School. Earned 8 varsity letters participating in football and track and field. As a freshman, he led the varsity football team in rushing yards. During his sophomore year, he again led his team in rushing. On the track, was a district champion in the 180-yard low hurdles. Do they have low hurdles these days? In track? I don't think they even have them anymore. Those things, man, I'm telling you, they were about like that. And when those guys went over those hurdles, you didn't even know they were missing a step. They were that good. Okay, during the same year, he finished 6th in the state in the low hurdle event. As a junior, Steve was the co-captain of the football team, scored a school record at the time of 24 individual points in a single football game, and again earned a district championship in the 180-yard low hurdles, while also finishing 4th in the state. During his senior year, Steve earned his 3rd straight district championship in the 180-yard low hurdles, while also finishing as the state runner-up in the same event. I would like for Mr. Fred Early, a Hall of Fame member, to come and introduce Steve.
Thank you, CW. Appreciate that. Well, we started back in this all started back in the 7th grade when I first run into Steve. He was, we had a basketball game between the Broadway Elementary School and the Tenerville Elementary School. Now, Steve, he didn't play in that game, but he came into that gym on crutches. And lo and behold, looked over there, and that boy had sideburns down to his jaw. 7th grade. So Steve was pretty mature a lot mature for his age. Steve, the next year in the 8th grade, Steve was a starting tackle on the JV football team at 140 pounds. Of course, he was a lot more mature than the rest of us at that point in time. The following year, of course, he moved up to the varsity, and which he was a running back on the varsity football team that year. As C.W. mentioned, Steve was known as a hammer. What he would do, he wouldn't run around you, he'd run through you. He was a hard-nosed, really good football player. Steve, back in 2013, Steve was enshrined into the Harrisonburg Hall of Fame. He coached up there, coached at TA and Harrisonburg for 30-some years, and I think he's had approximately 30 or 20 state champions, hurdlers in that period of time. So he's done his duty. And as a matter of fact, he still volunteers at Harrisonburg with their hurdlers. 1966, he was a JCC Sportsmanship Award winner at Bridgewater College. So it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Steve May. Congratulations, Steve.
No, it was my sophomore, junior, and senior year. But anyway, and we got something mixed up there. And I wasn't that good. My freshman year, I was pretty green. I had to take over for Junior Richie, Pete's brother. Pete's a former Hall of Famer here. And Junior got hurt, so I had to fill in. Pete was my mentor. He taught me to run hurdles, something I still do a lot of, or coaching of it anyway. But let me digress here, go back to where I'm supposed to start. I wanted to open by thanking all the folks that prepared the food and all the administrators who set up this program. It's a pretty good deal. I would like to introduce my family. I got a whole bunch of people here. I've probably got 30 people in the building. But I wanted to introduce, first of all, my own family. My wife Corey and her mother Hyda's back up in the back there waving their hands. My son, grandson, Aiden, who's back there somewhere. I got them scattered all over the building. There he is. My son Nathan is here. He's back there in the corner with them. Oh, no, here he is. And my daughter Francesca, she's in here somewhere. There we go, right in the middle. Now, I would also like to introduce my brothers and sisters. They're all here. They contributed a tremendous amount to Broadway High School athletics, and I think it's only fair to recognize them as such. And my older sister Lois is back there, Lois Rhodes. Many of you know her. She taught here at Broadway High School. She was our strongest supporter in the whole crew and the mother figure to us. Then I go to Phoebe Orbaugh and Nancy Hoover. They played basketball at Broadway High School down in the old gymnasium across from the police station. That was probably 1951 or 2. I was just 7, 8 years old. Then my brothers Joe and Ben are both in here. They're right dead in the center. And Joe and Ben both played football. Ben played basketball, football, track, and baseball. The most mixed athlete among us. And then my younger sister Deb, she's in here somewhere, and she played basketball. these are all varsity sports that they played. I think we've probably pretty well represented Broadway High School athletics. So I thought that was my grandson answered up back there. So I'd like to thank Fred here for introducing me and begin by saying you play about as well as the good athletes you're surrounded by, and I'm certainly surrounded by a lot. In the 4 years I played football and track at Broadway High School, I played with no less than with Jesse Folk added in here, it's probably 8 Hall of Famers. You play as well as the athletes you're surrounded by, trust me. We had lots of good ones. I played with 4 linemen who were Hall of Famers here, and I'll mention their names in a minute. And then, let me go ahead and say that I played with Pete Ritchie and Owen Graves. Owen, arguably the best lineman I ran behind ever. He was a real strong guy. And Pete, of course, was my mentor, and he taught me to run hurdles. When you go on down the line, there was Frankie Sorrells. I don't know if you'll remember. He was a sophomore, I think. Played a little bit of quarterback my senior year, and threw me the only pass I ever caught. Legendary. Couldn't catch the football. My good friend Fred back there, wherever he is, gave me a nickname. His Hands of Stone. Friends like that. Fred's a great friend. He and Moose Lance and I were the best of buddies. I ran with Moose, hunted and fished with him, and he was just a good old boy. And then there was Moose, Fred, and Lee Yancey, and Dick Shane. All of Dick and Moose and Fred and Owen Graves were the 4 Hall of Fame linemen. And buddy, it makes a difference. The guys you're running behind make you or break you, trust me. So I found out real early. I graduated from Bridgewater in 1966. I went to work there as a line coach, coached linemen in football there. And we had tremendous line football there. The linemen were really good. I found out you didn't have to be a very good running back if you had really, really good linemen. The reverse wasn't true. A good running back doesn't go very far without them. So that's when I learned that linemen were your secret to success in this ball game. So with the kind of talent I played around, I feel like it was pretty special. They were responsible for where I got to with it. And with that, I think I'm gonna hang it up here, folks. Thanks for listening.
Last but certainly not least, the next inductee is Anna Smith. She's a 1998 graduate of Broadway High School where she excelled in the softball field. During her time at Broadway, she was 3-time first-team All-District and 2-time second-team All-Region softball player. During her senior season, she was named first-team All-Region and first-team All-State. Anna continues to hold the school record for walks in the season with 32. She's going to be introduced this evening by her coach at the time, a fellow Hall of Fame member, Dennis Marchstiller. Dennis will come forward.
I was always told you're supposed to use the worst speaker first and work your way up. As
I'm not very good at this. But anyhow, Anna started her softball career on the first JV team at Broadway High School. She was a 4-year letterman. She played in 79 varsity career games, and it was mentioned she walked 33 times, which was a single season best at that at Broadway with Broadway High School softball players. And I'm going to repeat some things she said because I've kind of got some things that go along with that. She was first team all district in 96, 97, and 98 as an outfielder, and she was second team all region in 96 and 97. And one of the things I remember about Anna was when I came back from all region meetings or all district meetings, she was the first to grab me in the hallways because she wanted to know whether she made first team or not. But she was always a team player, and she always wanted to be the best. I still remember her dissatisfaction about finishing second team, and she'd always ask me at that time how could she improve. But as was mentioned, in her 98 senior season, that was her best season, and that was the first softball season at this high school. She was my leadoff hitter, and she played center field for me, and I remember her. We beat TA twice that year, and one of the games she led off with a triple because she was my leadoff hitter. She also, during that season, had three hit games, and when you walk a lot, the odds of you getting 3 hits in a game are slim. But she had 2 doubles, 3 triples, 3 runs scored, and 5 RBIs in those 3 games. But I remember another game. She wasn't just an offensive player. In the 2-1 win over Spotswood that year, she had 3 putouts in the top of the 8th inning. All 3 putouts she had in the top of the 8th inning. And 2 of those were spectacular diving catches that allowed us to win that game in the bottom of the 8th. Of course, when she came to me in 98, finally I was able to tell her she made first team all-region and first team all-state. And I still remember a question that I told her shortly after she asked this. I said, was it worth it? What I said was it worth it? Was the wait worth it? And she finished the year by making the VHSL All-Star team that year. She finished her career with 99 runs scored, 79 hits, 7 doubles, 7 triples, 2 home runs, 61 stolen bases, 68 walks, 52 RBIs, and a 357 batting average, and a 509 on base percent. I'll finish with this. I remember some of our indoor practices, and we always did, when we were inside, I liked to run a lot of relays because they would compete against each other just as hard. And I remember one of Anna's favorite, well, maybe it was the team's favorite because it was the only time they could beat her. We would set a bat on, I would set a bat on, have them set a bat on the floor and spin around it 5 times. And if you've ever seen a player go down the hallways leaning against the lockers, that was Anna. Anna Smith, Davina.
A lot really has changed since I walked these halls and played ball here. What hasn't is that I still don't like to be the center of attention, so I will do my best. Would have been great to have all of those plays on film, right? That definitely didn't happen when I went through, so I don't have a lot of those catches that he referred to, but I do remember some of them. His memory seems to be a little bit better than mine, actually. But I do need to first thank my parents, of course, my mom, the sacrifices that she had did not go unnoticed. Their unwavering encouragement, love and support definitely made my journey through sports what it was. I wouldn't have had that same journey without them. Definitely need to acknowledge Coach Marsteller. His dedication and guidance and belief in my potential definitely taught me the true meaning of discipline and determination, and your mentorship has left an indelible mark on my life. I do also need to give a special shout out and thanks to my Uncle Randy. He sparked my love for ball, signing me up for Little League when I was 10, and tirelessly practicing with me, so if it weren't for him, I would not be standing here today. Thank you to all my teammates. I see Connie out there. They definitely are part of this journey as well. Thank you for this incredible honor. And I'm truly blessed to be a part of this remarkable athletic tradition and am immensely grateful for this recognition. Go Gobblers.
Okay, I think that's about it for the evening. Don't forget, if you want to nominate someone for the Hall of Fame, see Ryan or see one of the committee members, or I have some here tonight. All you got to do is fill this thing out the best you can. We'll look up some stuff for you, but it always helps to have these. And I'll say, like I say every year, just because you nominate somebody, say for next year, and they don't make it, they're always in the pool, okay, to be looked at and can always be selected later. Once again, I want to say special thanks to Ryan. He pulls this, he does a lot of work on this stuff. And don't forget the inductees out here in the large commons. Meet out here in the large commons now, immediately, so you can get your picture taken. I want to thank everyone for coming and have a safe drive home. Thank you.